This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. A Problem by Anton Chekhov. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Davis Drake. The strictest measures were taken that the Yuskovs' family secret might not leak out and become generally known. Half of the servants were sent off to the theatre or the circus, and another half were sitting in the kitchen and not allowed to leave it. Orders were given that no one was to be admitted. The wife of the colonel, her sister, and the governess, though they had been initiated into the secret, kept up a pretense of knowing nothing. They sat in the dining-room and did not show themselves in the drawing-room or the hall. Sasha Yuskov, the young man of 25 who was the cause of all the commotion, had arrived some time before, and by the advice of kind-hearted Ivan Markovitch, his uncle, who was taking his part, he sat meekly in the hall by the door leading to the study, and prepared himself to make an open, candid explanation. The other side of the door, in the study, a family council was being held. The subject under discussion was an exceedingly disagreeable and delicate one. Sasha Yuskov had cashed at one of the banks a false promissory note, and it had become due for payment 3 days before, and now his two paternal uncles and Ivan Markovitch, the brother of his dead mother, were deciding the question whether they should pay the money and save the family honor, or wash their hands of it and leave the case to go for trial. To outsiders who have no personal interest in the matter, such questions seem simple. For those who are so unfortunate as to have to decide them in earnest, they are extremely difficult. The uncles had been talking for a long time, but the problem seemed no nearer decision. "My friends," said the uncle who was a colonel, and there was a note of exhaustion and bitterness in his voice, "who says that family honor is a mere convention? I don't say that at all. I am only warning you against a false view. I am pointing out the possibility of an unpardonable mistake. How can you fail to see it? I am not speaking Chinese. I am speaking Russian." "My dear fellow, we do understand," Ivan Markovitch protested mildly. "How can you understand if you say that I don't believe in family honor? I repeat once more, family honor, falsely understood, is a prejudice, falsely understood. That's what I say. Whatever may be the motives for screening a scoundrel, whoever he may be, and helping him to escape punishment, it is contrary to law and unworthy of a gentleman. It's not saving the family honor, it's civil cowardice. Take the army, for instance. The honor of the army is more precious to us than any other honor. Yet we don't screen our guilty members, but condemn them. And does the honor of the army suffer in consequence? Quite the contrary." The other paternal uncle, an official in the treasury, a taciturn, dull-witted, and rheumatic man, sat silent, or spoke only of the fact that the Yuskovs' name would get into the newspapers if the case went for trial. His opinion was that the case ought to be hushed up from the first and not become public property, but apart from publicity in the newspapers he advanced no other argument in support of his opinion. The maternal uncle, kind-hearted Ivan Markovitch, spoke smoothly, softly, and with a tremor in his voice. He began with saying that youth has its rights and peculiar temperaments. Which of us has not been young, and who has not been led astray, to say nothing of ordinary mortals, Even great men have not escaped errors and mistakes in their youth. Take, for instance, the biography of great writers. Did not every one of them gamble, drink, and draw down upon himself the anger of right-thinking people in his young days? If Sasha's error bordered upon crime, they must remember that Sasha had received practically no education. He had been expelled from the high school in the 5th class. He had lost his parents in early childhood, and so had been left at the tenderest age without guidance and good benevolent influences. He was nervous, excitable, and had no firm ground under his feet, and above all, he had been unlucky. Even if he were guilty, anyway, he deserved indulgence and the sympathy of all compassionate souls. He ought, of course, to be punished, but he was punished as it was by his conscience and the agonies he was enduring now, while awaiting the sentence of his relations. The comparison with the army made by the colonel was delightful, and did credit to his lofty intelligence. His appeal to their feeling of public duty spoke for the chivalry of his soul. But they must not forget that in each individual the citizen is closely linked with the Christian. "Shall we be false to civic duty," Ivan Markovitch exclaimed passionately, "if, instead of punishing an erring boy, we hold out to him a helping hand?" Ivan Markovitch talked further of family honor. He had not the honor to belong to the Ushkov family himself, but he knew their distinguished family went back to the 13th century. He did not forget for a minute, either, that his precious beloved sister had been the wife of one of the representatives of that name. In short, the family was dear to him for many reasons, and he refused to admit the idea that, for the sake of a paltry 1,500 roubles, a blot would be cast on the escutcheon that was beyond all price. If all the motives he had brought forward were not sufficiently convincing, he, Ivan Markovitch, in conclusion, begged his listeners to ask themselves what was meant by crime. Crime is an immoral act founded upon ill will. But is the will of man free? Philosophy has not yet given a positive answer to that question. Different views were held by the learned. The latest school of Lombroso, for instance, denies the freedom of the will, and considers every crime as the product of the purely anatomical peculiarities of the individual. "Ivan Markovitch," said the colonel, in a voice of entreaty, "we are talking seriously about an important matter, and you bring in Lombroso? You clever fellow! Think a little. What are you saying all this for? Can you imagine that all your thunderings and rhetoric will furnish an answer to the questions?" Sasha Uskov sat at the door and listened. He felt neither terror, shame, nor depression, but only weariness and inward emptiness. It seemed to him that it made absolutely no difference to him whether they forgave him or not. He had come here to hear his sentence and to explain himself simply because kind-hearted Ivan Markovitch had begged him to do so. He was not afraid of the future. It made no difference to him where he was, here in the hall, in prison, or in Siberia. If Siberia, then let it be Siberia, damn it all! He was sick of life and found it insufferably hard. He was inextricably involved in debt. He had not a farthing in his pocket. His family had become detestable to him. He would have to part from his friends and his women sooner or later, and they had begun to be too contemptuous of his sponging on them. The future looked black. Sasha was indifferent, and was only disturbed by one circumstance. The other side of the door they were calling him a scoundrel and a criminal. Every minute he was on the point of jumping up, bursting into the study, and shouting in answer to the detestable metallic voice of the colonel, "You are lying!" Criminal was a dreadful word. That is what murderers thieves, robbers are.